Hi, I wanted to post some more stuff about my journey. As you saw in my first video, the Lord has done some amazing stuff in my life for sure. I've had another pretty major deliverance really. Not quite sure really whether it's multiple deliverances in one, to be honest. I was after all the problems that I had in my life, I was on quite a heavy cocktail of psychiatric drugs for over 18 years. I was still on those medications when I did my last video, and it's like, can't deny the Lord had delivered me from a lot, but that was still in my life really, the medication that I hadn't managed to get off. I always had faith that God could get me off it, despite being told many times by the doctors, oh, you'll never get off the medication, you'll need it for life. Even just one of the diagnoses, and I had sort of multiple diagnoses, even just one of them was always sort of deemed a permanent condition that you could never get over, let alone get off the medication. But as of this time, I'm now free of all medication, and I have been now for a couple of months. In fact, because I've given up the cigarettes as well, I'm 36 years old now, and I'm now completely drug-free for the first time since the age of 13. So yeah, it's quite a big adjustment of learning to live, and it's been a very, very difficult time, to be honest, which is why I haven't answered any comments on YouTube. I've just not been in a good place really. I guess in coming off the medication I was on, all the issues that I went on this medication for 18 years ago still very much there, and it basically time to deal with it basically. Something that I learned coming off the medication was, I've been in Christ for 2.5 years now, and it was only a few weeks ago after coming off the medication that I actually came to believe that Christ could forgive me for my sins, even though I've been walking as a Christian and being healed and delivered from so much for the last 2.5 years. I've literally only a few weeks ago accepted his forgiveness. I firmly believe this is because most of the issues that I was on medication for were stemming from guilt, basically from childhood sin. The medication basically kept that guilt locked in, so I just didn't know I could be forgiven, even though I was a believer in Christ. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but it was 3 weeks after I came off my last dose of medication. I was thinking, because so much of my sin issues had come up for me to think about really, and I said to the Lord one night, I said, does your forgiveness even extend as far as me? Because I've been a pretty hardcore sinner in my life, beyond mentioning really. So I said, does your forgiveness extend even as far as someone like me? I suppose maybe as well because I'd spent over 2 years in Christ not feeling forgiven, and I doubted if I could be forgiven really. Anyway, so I asked him that. Later on that night, I was lying on my bed, and I had this sort of image flash into my head, which was quite bizarre, and I actually saw that God's actually got a sense of humour as well, and it was like an image of, it was like God with Christ sort of up in heaven, and God giving him a prep talk, sort of saying to me, right, Jesus, my son, you now go down and die for those people's sins on earth, but don't you die for that Steve's sins, he's been far too evil. And I sort of realised at that point how preposterous it was really that, that he might die for everyone but not for me. So, that's really the first major thing that's happened coming off the medication withdrawal, was realising that actually, yeah, I can be forgiven too. And that's made a big difference really. But there's still more growth and change that's been happening after that really, which I'll get to in the next video.